As Dragon Age the Veilguard draws so much closer to release, I think there's a lot to love, but also a lot to be worried about, a lot to be skeptical about in terms of this upcoming Bioware release. But whether you are excited about this game or you hate this game and are going to stay completely away from it, this video is going to be specifically for Dragon Age fans, someone like me who is excited about this game but might not get exactly what I'm expecting. Now before we get into the video, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but we're almost at 500 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for the support. If you are new to the channel and you like gaming news and you like gaming reviews and you like the video that you see here, please subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Now let's get into the video. So I've talked a lot about the positives that Dragon Age the Veilguard has, whether it's their consumer practices coming into the release, or whether I think it's a good thing that they're changing from the open world formula to the more open-ended formula, which I think lends a lot better to what Bioware does well and lends a lot better to the limitations of the Frostbite engine, or even your own player choice and that having a big consequence within the game as a whole, both on a small and mass scale. And although I do think there is a lot of good here, today's video is going to be a little bit different. I want to highlight some of the quote-unquote bad and a lot of reasons why I don't think Dragon Age fans are really getting what they expect, and I don't think Dragon Age fans are going to like this game as much as a bigger commercial, wider audience and the demographic that I think Bioware is trying to market this game towards. So the first thing that I want to talk about, it's the most obvious thing that any Dragon Age fan can look at and see and say, this might not be for me, is the art style. And this is both with the vibe of the overall world and the way the characters and the enemies look. And starting just with the characters first, I think they look very Disneyfied. And I've said this before and I'm going to say it again because this is something I genuinely think is an issue with the upcoming game. They just don't look as mature. They don't look as straight up badass as the characters in the previous games looked. And this goes back into the enemies as well. If you look at something like the Darkspawn, I don't think the Darkspawn looks scary. The Darkspawn don't look like this brutal, disgusting enemy that they did in some of the old games that genuinely, as a younger self, scared me from times going up against them. And going back to the characters for a second, the Qunari and the redesigns there and just across the board, they don't look as badass. I want to play this big, beefy race that just goes in is ready to wreck house, but the Qunari don't look like that anymore. They kind of just look like every other race with a different skin tone and some horns. And I think this goes directly into how the world was crafted as well. The world was crafted in a way that definitely gets away from the whole dark fantasy look and the dark fantasy vibe. And although at times so far, just in what people have played already, we have seen them go back to that dark fantasy at times. But I don't think it's a whole game based around the dark fantasy type of genre. I think it's a game that's more based around the fantastical and the whimsical with little bits of dark fantasy put in there as well. And this is why I think a lot of the characters interact with each other in the way that they have been in what we've seen so far. And that is a lot of jokes, a lot of quips, a lot of quirkiness. And now, not all the characters are that way, but there definitely are some that are, and I would say almost half of them from what I've seen so far are kind of acting like that. And that lends itself a lot better to a more fantasy and more whimsical world, like I've said, and not necessarily lending itself well to an entire dark fantasy world. And if you look back at Origins, we did have characters like this as well. Alistair, for example, was someone who I absolutely loved, and he was always cracking jokes and he was always cracking quips. But the difference is he was kind of the joke relief, at least definitely at the start of that game, because the world was so dark. You didn't have a lot of that, but you had one little shining beacon, which was Alistair, to kind of give you that joke relief and lift you up a little bit within that dark world. And now it kind of seems like there's one or two dark moments that pull you down from this more fantasy, whimsical type of world where everybody, or at least a lot of the different companions and characters, are cracking those jokes and quips. So you might have the complete opposite, where there's one character that is very dark and there's a couple scenes that are very dark that bring you down, instead of something like Alistair that's bringing you back up above the full dark fantasy world, if that makes sense. But with all this being said, not everyone's going to hate this. This is personal preference. Some people might really enjoy it. I just personally think that Bioware, over the years, specifically with Dragon Age, Age has cultivated an audience that, in my opinion, prefers the dark fantasy type of vibe a little bit more. Now, the next thing I think Dragon Age fans might be a little bit disappointed in is the amount of choices that you're able to bring in from previous games into the Veilguard. The only choices you have are the romance option from Dragon Age Inquisition and basically what you did at the very end of Inquisition's DLC. And what does this mean for the Veilguard and the story of the Veilguard? Well, this means they aren't able to really mention any of the events from the first or the second game. And if they do mention the events, they have to be very, very, very careful how they talk about how those events ended up getting to the events of the Veilguard. When you start up the Veilguard, in my opinion, you should be able to choose multiple different things from Origins, multiple different things from Dragon Age 2, and a lot more from Inquisition that could serve as the baseline for how the story progresses in the Veilguard. And for a game that I think is going to have a lot of character choice and a lot of consequences based on that character choice, it's definitely a bummer that you're not able to bring in any choices really at all from previous games. And this goes back to what I was saying, where Bioware is definitely marketing this game to a bigger, wider, more commercial audience, not necessarily people that have played the previous Dragon Age games. So this decision for them is probably a good thing, that they don't have to know or have played the previous Dragon Age games. But for Dragon Age fans, people who want to hear them talk about the hero of Ferelden or events in the original Dragon Age games, we're not going to be getting that pretty much at all. And the last thing I want to mention here is the combat, because this goes back to what type of fan base has Dragon Age cultivated over the years, and this is a fan base who enjoys the slower, more methodical, tactical, pause-based combat. And in the Veilguard, we're getting something very opposite of that. We're getting something very reminiscent of the new God of War games, which, granted, I've put hundreds of hours into those games. I absolutely love them, and I absolutely love the combat in those games. The problem is, this combat is not something that Dragon Age fans personally have come up and loved within Dragon Age games. Now, again, the commercial audience, most people, the majority of the world, I think likes action combat more, likes action combat better, and is going to love the combat in this game. However, Dragon Age fans, on the other hand, I think are going to definitely have to do some adjusting to find more enjoyment, or the same amount of enjoyment that other people might have to find with this combat. And overall, this is why I think a lot of Dragon Age fans might hate or might be disappointed in the Veilguard. However, that's not to say there's not a lot to love as well. You have returning characters from the Dragon Age universe. You have a new game from the Dragon Age developers in the Dragon Age world with Dragon Age lore. So these things are definitely still exciting for Dragon Age fans, no matter what the case may be with the game that's coming out. On top of this, I also think as the story progresses, as consequences start to take place and characters get affected, I don't think they're going to be as jokey and quippy as the game keeps going on. I think we're also going to see a lot more dark fantasy type of environments and elements in the game as the story progresses. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I wouldn't be surprised. If you look at the most recent trailer, they're definitely trying to come back and market this game a lot more into the dark fantasy type of vibe than they were at the start with the first trailer that I genuinely do not think was very good at all. So overall, I just hope someone like me, who is a Dragon Age fan, who does have some skepticism going into the game, really enjoys the experience. I also hope people who haven't played Dragon Age come in and really love the game as well. Nothing would be better than to get a good Dragon Age game, to build the Dragon Age fan base and have more Dragon Age fans, and then to get more Dragon Age games in the future and have more confidence that Bioware is going to create good Dragon Age games going into the future. Thank you guys for watching the video. I really appreciate it. Please like the video if you like the video, subscribe for more videos like these, and I really want to hear down below in the comments, are you a Dragon Age fan? Are you not a Dragon Age fan? And why you are excited or why you may not be excited for this new release. So I really appreciate you guys watching again, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.